Speaker number 4 will answer the question, how will biodiversity loss in the Amazon reshape global conservation efforts? Code number 5018.
From bombs to tensions to now even the temperature, it seems like the only thing that's not getting hotter nowadays is our president. I mean, really, Donald Trump looks like if the Lorax didn't speak for the trees. However, soon he might not have any trees left to speak for. As the Council on Foreign Relations contextualizes, on January 4th of this year, the Amazon rainforest's biodiversity is rapidly degrading, with over 20% of the Amazon rainforest already destroyed, thousands of species in the Amazon rainforest at risk of extinction, and trees getting rid of by deforestation every single year. Hundreds of thousands of acres in the Amazon have been destroyed, and biodiversity is under grave threat, imperiling not just the Amazon rainforest, but the entire globe's efforts to control conservation of our people, our animals, and our planet. Considering what the global climate clock quantifies, ominously, 5 minutes ago, we have 4 years, 31 days, and 18 hours until the effects of climate change become irreversible. This isn't a minute problem in the Amazon. It's a potential catalyst for an environmental apocalypse. That's why we ask, how will biodiversity loss in the Amazon reshape global conservation efforts? The answer is worrying. It could devastate global conservation efforts. First, by rapidly expanding fossil fuel presence. Second, by silencing indigenous communities. And finally, by dramatically increasing carbon dioxide emissions into our atmosphere. But first, if you stacked $45 billion straight up into the air in $1 bills, it would stretch thousands of miles high, which is also the height that I tell people when I'm lying about how tall I actually am. However, $45 billion is also the value of oil and gas within the Amazon rainforest. That's the first way the loss of biodiversity there will devastate global conservation efforts. It's by, first, dramatically increasing fossil fuel presence. The Global Non-Proliferation Treaty for Fossil Fuels, an internationally recognized nonprofit, illustrates on October 24th of last year. The Amazon rainforest's once thriving biodiversity encouraged the Brazilian government to protect it from fossil fuel corporate interests. This helped keep fossil fuels out of the Amazon, the industry that controls 75% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Yet as biodiversity has grown vulnerable in the Amazon rainforest, fossil fuel companies have increased their presence there, imperiling global conservation efforts. Indeed, the nonprofit magazine The Amazon Watch warns, worryingly, just 3 days ago, using the excuse that biodiversity loss in the Amazon rainforest has become inevitable, the Brazilian government has permitted its state-owned oil company, Petrobras, to produce billions of dollars worth of oil and natural gas within the Amazon rainforest, destroying thousands of acres of land. While it's making a lucrative profit, it's dealing lucrative damage to the environment and the entire globe's efforts to conserve the Amazon rainforest. Fossil fuel companies threaten to turn all of us into fossils, and the biodiversity loss of the Amazon rainforest are only digging us deeper and deeper into the darkness of our self-inflicted grave. But second, while we all call the Earth our home, there's only one group that really gets to do so. The second way biodiversity loss in the Amazon rainforest could destroy global conservation efforts is by silencing indigenous communities. Indeed, as NASA writes on October 4th of last year, indigenous communities once thrived off of the biodiversity of the Amazon rainforest. It sustained a population of 1.5 million indigenous people, over 350 ethnic groups, which wasn't just a thriving community. Those communities also protected the land from corporate fossil fuel and agricultural interests, protecting the globe's efforts to conserve the Amazon rainforests and forests internationally as a whole. But as biodiversity has suffered across the Amazon, indigenous communities have bared the costs. Indeed, the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative explains, in conjunction with the World Wildlife Fund, in November of 2022, now indigenous communities in the Amazon rainforest are twice as likely to die of wildfires as the average citizen, precisely because of the loss of biodiversity. Hundreds of thousands have been forced to vacate their ancestral homelands, meaning not just a humanitarian tragedy, but a population vulnerable to corporate threats, with over 40,000 acres of the Amazon rainforest destroyed by agriculture companies last year alone, because indigenous communities weren't there to protect the territory. As the Amazon rainforest continues to suffer, not just will the environment suffer, but hundreds of thousands of indigenous people will be forced to leave their ancestral homeland and potentially never return. But third, so long as carbon emissions continue increasing, we are literally and metaphorically cooked. And that's the third and final way biodiversity loss in the Amazon rainforest threatens the entire globe's conservation efforts. It's by increasing the presence of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The US's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association explains in a scholarly analysis in February of this year, the Amazon rainforest is our largest global asset in the world's effort to conserve the environment, containing 123 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions, absorbed over decades. The Amazon rainforest guarantees that we are able to undo what has threatened to destroy our entire planet. Yet, as the Amazon rainforest biodiversity has suffered, the Amazon's ability to control international emissions has suffered as well. Brazil's Sao Paulo National Institute of Space Research released a worrying scholarly report. In July of 2021, the Amazon rainforest is now emitting more carbon dioxide than it's absorbing, undoing centuries of climate progress that the Amazon rainforest advanced for humanity. With 123 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide, 3 years of global emissions contained within the Amazon rainforest, and 4 years left until climate change becomes irreversible. The death of biodiversity and forests within the Amazon rainforest is a matter of life and death. I don't want this speech to be a message of doom. This speech should be a wake-up call, answering the question, how will biodiversity loss in the Amazon rainforest impact the globe's conservation efforts? The answer is ominous. It could devastate them, be it by expanding fossil fuel corporate presence, devastating indigenous communities, or worsening the Amazon rainforest's ability to absorb carbon dioxide emissions. While Donald Trump might be orange like the Lorax, it's time for the international community to stop speaking for the trees and start actually acting to save them.
Our fourth speaker will be cross-examined by speaker number 3.
Hey, I just want to say, what a great speech.
Thank
I
you.
have a few questions to go along with it.
Of course.
So your first point talks about oil and gas drilling within the Amazon rainforest. But if President Lula da Silva of Brazil has committed to reducing oil and gas drilling within the entirety of the Amazon rainforest by the year 2030, how exactly does your point still stand?
Yeah, that's the problem. That is an incredibly greenwashed goal. We can pretend we're going to be net zero by 2030 in the Amazon rainforest all we want, but actions speak vastly louder than words. Look to the billions of dollars in oil and natural gas development that Lula da Silva himself has permitted Brazil's state-owned oil company of Petrobras to conduct within the Amazon rainforest. So long as Lula da Silva allows the Amazon rainforest's biodiversity to die and fossil fuel companies to continue polluting this precious territory, the entire international community's efforts to conserve the planet will suffer.
Great, thank you so much. Let's talk about your second point, which is specifically related to the increase of agricultural farmland within the Amazon rainforest. If at the United Nations there have been many different attempts over the course of the last 5 years to use UN resources to fight agricultural farmland in the Amazon rainforest, again, how does that point still stand?
That's the key word in your question. Attempts, not successes. The United Nations has tried to control agricultural development within the Amazon rainforest, but what was preventing that agricultural development from happening was millions of indigenous people who stood up for their land rights and their territory. Without their presence, because they don't have the biodiversity they need to survive, there isn't anything stopping agricultural companies from polluting the territory. Last year, 40,000 acres of the Amazon rainforest was destroyed by these very companies. The United Nations can pretend that it's acting all it wants, but once again, actions speak louder than words. The Amazon rainforest is dying, and the international community is not doing enough to stop it.
Thank you so much.